So it's been 10 years since I joined YouTube, and I'm planning to leave YouTube. Not that I'm planning to leave the internet, just that I'm planning to leave YouTube. I have 2 other videos on the subject, but to sort of shorten it, I don't feel YouTube is for me anymore, even though obviously this channel is 10 years old. I don't really feel like I want to continue on here anymore. I'm recording this in advance. It's sometime in July when I'm actually recording this, but I intend to record this well far in advance so then I can put these up and then be done. Yeah. Okay. So this is specifically going to be about everything about Splatoon. Okay, maybe not everything, because I'm not going to go into all of how I do everything here. Mostly my opinions on the current state of things. What I feel is the current state of things, because I don't really feel like I can be the authority that can say, yeah, this is the current state of things, when I'm like not really paying attention to a whole lot of things, so it's not really my business to say, yeah, this affects everybody, this just affects me. Maybe some other people too, but mostly it just affects me. So I'm still doing the project, it's just at a much slower rate. Things are tough, let me just put it one way. Let me just say, I don't really think the way a lot of other people think. There are a lot of things around me that internally I'm cringing at. Let me just leave it at that. But because of that, it's I don't necessarily, I'm not at the position where I think Fisham was at, where like, ah, yeah, everyone sucks, everything's a slump. Boo. It's mostly slow due to a bunch of factors that really sort of drive things sideways. I'm going to try and update on my Steam group in announcements that I'll make. I'm long, I'm rambly, I mean that's why I'm making this video, I don't know how long it'll be, but hey, it's probably gonna be 40 or maybe even an hour. Who knows? I talk a long time. So, you know, I have a couple of bullet points on my opinions on things. I'm going full in this time. Well, maybe not fully. Haha! Not really, but some things I sort of just kept to myself because I was worried I was gonna trip the wire on something because, oh no! Who knows if I could actually do something with that in the future. I don't have any predisposition towards these things now, so I'll just say what I want. When I started the map project, which was the beginning of 2017, all I had up to that point were a bunch of SCS files from Splatoon 1's directories. At that point, all I had done was examine the file structure, so then I could understand, you know, this is the models folder, this is the folder where all the messages and all the text is. Yada yada yada. So, like, at that point, I had a basic idea of where everything was. But I was at a position where I wasn't really able to do things properly. So, you know, I loaded all of it the way I thought I was supposed to load it. With the help of user back in 2017, I had set up what were essentially a bunch of blend files where I manually scaled them up because I didn't really understand how the scaling worked. More on that because I figured that one out to a better degree more recently. And when I loaded them, I used a Blender script, specifically Ray Cooper's. It was designed specifically for Mario Kart 8, but he had said on a forum somewhere that, you know, Splatoon's is essentially the same level of BFRES model as Mario Kart 8's were, so... And, you know, in terms of the absolute default case scenario where you're just sort of trying to poke at models and not really do anything specific with them, okay, but that script is not really all that great for the models, and especially now, what I'm doing with them now. Because what I sort of did during all of what I could do in 2017 and 18 was make a bunch of blends, scale the actual models up several degrees until I mess with it proper. I had reference model of a T-pose Inkling from Fission's enhanced Inkling's blend file, which one might be under the implication that I can actually do anything with those models. I think this was what he gave me was the SFM models, so I can't really do anything with that, sorry. I don't even know if they are like fully a final version or whatever, so I don't even think you can say it's that. But I basically tested with a T-pose Inkling, trying to match with my screenshots. A lot of them ended up with 3.2, 3.3, 3.4, 3.0, a lot of 3.x's all over the place. And this was me scaling them up manually in Blender. I wasn't aware of the scale command in the QC yet. Then I made Hacky Collision around that scaled up version of the map after a more hand-angling to give me an idea on what basic collision is supposed to be. I think this was mid-2018 or something. Because things were very tough and rough then. And, so... And because of that, because of a combination of, I'm loading dozens of models into one blend, and they're all very messy, they're all scaled up, they're all given collision in this scaled up way. This meant that trying to get any accurate positions on anything was actual pain. Lots of screenshots, lots of random positioning. Yeah, it was not fun. So, like, basically, I was doing things very manually because I had no idea of a lot of the technical intricacies of a lot of it that I now understand compared to back then, that were things that tools didn't exist for, and that I wouldn't have been able to understand even if they did back then. One of those things, the scale, is sort of understandable. So, all of my collision is made with a scaled up version of the map, and this was me manually scaling everything. So, like, select A, and then individually type in all of the value that I wanted them to be. It was extremely messy, and so things are not in their default positions, and so even if I scaled them down, it wouldn't help because objects would then be offset in a way I don't want them to be, and oh god, it's which includes the collision itself. So it doesn't mean I have to redo it. It just means that it needs a lot of tweaking in order for it to actually fit. One stage that I had to fix up fairly recently, Arowana Mall, did require like heavy amounts of tweaking due to this, which was actually the stage that got me to need to redo everything. Another thing is object positions, and like this is also gonna tie into like the scale, the scale thing in terms of like how big the map should actually be. It wasn't that I wasn't just aware of the scale command in the QC that you can use to scale things up dynamically, but even just how big the maps should be in regards to an Inkling instead of just using a T-pose and trying to match it to a posed, because I can't T-pose the Inkling naturally in Splatoon. A posed version of the Inkling in the game is, yeah, also pain. So most of what I was working off of was something Fishin said a long time ago when we were talking about how Inkopolis Plaza was off scale. He had said something like, the Squid Sisters are a head height taller than the Inklings, but supposedly are the same size, so scale in Splatoon is very strange because of that. And so that was the only sort of metric I was working with in terms of how big things, quote-unquote, should be. In messing with the object positions for the stages, I've had to reload everything at its original scale so then things can be accurate, as well as try and find the proper positions for everything. And I don't necessarily want to be using screenshots for this, because originally I just had a Python program by someone, the forum is now dead, but it was a Python program by somebody who used it to read the Splatoon 1 biamal files, and they match up most of the time. Sometimes they do require some adjustments that I have to make manually, but I usually then only make very small controlled adjustments, so then they're not really obvious that they are adjustments. So then the objects are actually in their official, or close to official if it's not actually official, positions from the game. And this involves reading the biamal file, because it actually has the scale and position of everything, and the scale of the maps in those is 1. So, most of the time, at least I would hope so. So then this got me thinking, what exactly is going on with the Inkling? I remember people back in the day, and like back when like Octolings were being hacked in. That's not really the right word for it, but heck it. When Octolings were being hacked in, they were messing with the scale of the Inkling then too. A whole bunch of codes are about that. Long story short, I find out that the Inkling is also one-to-one with the stage, as I suspected, in every single stage, in single player and multiplayer. Multiplayer being recon, because I'm not actually going to sabotage a match for that. But the Inkling is one-to-one with the stage. It would obviously be the same in Splatoon 2. But Fishin is right. The models for the Squid Sisters are a head height taller, yet according to the photo mode in Splatoon 2, they are the same size. So what's going on there? they're sized down a little bit to match the Inklings. Something like 0.75 or even 0.8 can match them to the Inklings somewhat perfectly. And I presume this is what happens in game. I have no idea what the actual value is, but a similar thing has to be done for the stages, because the Inklings are 4 times their original size in Source. So that would then imply that all the stages need to be 4 times their original size. The camera's focused on your Inkling/Octoling. And so they're the focal point of whatever is on. So everything looks smaller because like you're focused on your character inking the floor. You're not focused on how big your environment is. Unless you actually go in and start looking at it, because then they do look very small. But so because of that, I'm locking most of my stages to be 3.0 or 3.2, which is roughly 70 to 80% of the size they should be, so then they're actually able to work with the Inklings to some degree. You know, you're able to sit in chairs and do whatever the heck you want with them there. And so because I didn't know really of either of these things off the program that I could use to read the biamals, that you could just get their scale and their rotation and their position, recommended position, because some of them can be a bit off. Because of that, I kind of have to redo everything. And if I'm going to be reloading the stages at their original scale, that means that since I made the collision for a version of it that's like 10 times 10 times bigger and is also misplaced, there's a lot of work that needs to be redone in fixing it so then it can actually work in a new setting. So then it's more accurate and more organized as well. When I was doing the square, I really got the heavy hand from user who I was working with at the time, who really couldn't understand my workflow because the square was literally messy. Like, the equivalent of messy pens and stuff in a room everywhere. Like you walk into someone's, like you walked into the back of like a paint shop or something. I don't know. It was bad. So trying to organize my workflow so then it's not a giant mess is also one thing. And then having to redo all the stages to load them all again is another. I'm currently, not to mention all of the other things that have been happening that I don't like, are getting in the way of all that as well. Including personal things. Currently, as I'm recording this, the point of progress I'm at is onto the Salmon Run stages. Switch Toolbox can also read biamals, but it's not fancy. There's no, I don't know what the program was called, but there was like a 3D World biamal reader that people use for that game. And no one's made one for Splatoon 2 yet. The only one I found that someone tried to make for it is a program that kind of explodes if you try to load any Splatoon 2 model on it. So I kind of have to do it the more manual way, where if I want to view the summon run maps, I have to go through like 400 and something nodes on the stage before I find an object that's an actual model that I can then read the values for, and it's just reading, here are the 3 numbers for translation, and then rotation, and then scale. Now go through a billion more nodes. Well, I'm actually sort of past that part, but a lot of the salmon run stages, I didn't compile them. I didn't have them for a long period of time to extract and work with, so I'm kind of trying to put them all in. A lot of the other stages I actually had QCs for, and basic versions of the stages with their scaled up manual garbage that I made all that time ago. So in that case, it's basically just replacing all of those models and the QCs and then just organizing it better and then fixing it. But I'm trying to do this alphabetically, and the salmon run stages are next. And yeah, they do not have QCs, and they do not have materials, and they do not have basically anything. So I have to now set all of that up, and trying to do that when you're in a bit of a slump is a bit hard. It will be done, but very slowly. That's all I'm basically going to say. So, and then when I'm past the hill that is the salmon run stages, it's basically going to be the same for the others. I'm not sure what I'm going to do regarding SFM at this point. Everything I'm doing is for Gmod. I'm even trying to reduce as much time as possible that I can do by loading in for all the lighting checks. I haven't even done that as much. None of the stages have that. Because the only thing that I don't really know if I can sort of do is water. I'm not even joking, it's just water. I don't know what water I should pick, what water I should do. I know you do have to use the water in the game, and especially considering the way the water is for the salmon run stages specifically. Especially the way for the water is done. It's I don't know how I should do that. It's gonna be stupid hard. I can do animations just fine, actually. It's just a couple of minor things that I sort of have to pick apart in order for it to work. But it should hopefully work. I'm just kind of in a slump because I need to fix up all that salmon run stuff before I do anything else. Plus I want to play the actual salmon run on top of that, so yeah, that's a thing. So that's where I'm at. Now for the part where I'm just basically venting because I have no faith in anything in terms of anything going the way I want it to. So I'm just gonna and basically just spit, and whoever cares will care. So I used to look up to a lot of people in the Splatoon lot, I suppose. Mostly because I believed naively that those people were just doing it to be good. And you know, I'm not necessarily going to use this to trash on any one specific person. There are a lot of people who have done silly things. So, what I want to do, I want to find some way of making public the things that can be edited. this is why I also want to go do tutorials, but I don't necessarily want to make tutorials where I once made a video for someone in the map porting group for Splatoon stuff, but they didn't really want to listen to me. They didn't even really want to see it. They asked me to help them with something, and so I figured the best way was to show them. So I record a 45-minute video of me messing around with the thing they wanted me to help them with. They don't bother, and then they don't bother touching it until they basically can the project 2 years later or something. So I don't exactly have a very high opinion of doing it for someone, and that person was already in the map group, yet they were not prepared to have a better method of collision than the method they were using prior. So I don't necessarily want to be making tutorials for people who know did nothing. There needs to be some kind of pre-preparedness to it all, and I would imagine that was probably the same mentality that forced Fishin and the others to not really make tutorials for anything. Not only would it be difficult to explain, it's difficult to explain to people who don't want to understand, especially when, even just for basic making a Garry's Mod tutorial, people don't want to even listen to the basic instructions I give there. Not even just because, yes, okay, I did have very poor scripting skills for the entirety of it, but the Garry's Mod duping tutorial is just find the dupe, find the dupe, find the picture for that dupe, which should probably be next to it because it will be named exactly the same thing, but with JPEG on the end of it. Edit that JPEG to be literally anything. Save it with that name. Congratulations, now you have an edited Gmod dupe image. I still get comments to this day of people who don't get it. I don't necessarily want to be having that with the Splatoon thing, because it's I don't necessarily want to be helping those who clearly have no capacity to want to try. It's bad enough that when I wanted to look for something there was nothing, only because most people probably see this and are like, okay, that's probably why you don't make videos on this. That's probably why Random T-Bush and all the rest haven't, because they expect those that want to will do it on their own. And not because they're mean or anything, it's just that there has to be some level of preparedness before you do any of it. Not that I don't want to show people at some point how, but that I don't necessarily want to be doing it on YouTube, where, as I said, I made a dupe tutorial that was essentially just replace this JPEG with anything you want and people still don't get it. I don't want to help people that don't want to be helped. And it's this same mentality which has probably driven others away from me as well. But it's not that I want to be mean, it's that there's only so much I can really be patient for. Let me start with the small fry first, because, and no, I don't mean the actual small fry. That's a localization name. I'm gonna start with the things that bother me the least about the port specifically. This is mostly me just wishlisting at this point. I don't expect any of this to actually be addressed, because the people that are actually doing things these days are the types of people who wouldn't understand why I'm saying the things that I'm saying. and I don't have really any faith in anybody to do any of this. I'm mostly looking for this for my own sake. I'm not really banking on anything or anyone giving me this lightning in the bottle. So, importing the weapons, and let me just also preface this, I'm mostly going to be talking about Splatoon 2. I'll try mentioning 3, but it's going to be hard. So, here at 30 minutes is my wish list for what I wish I could fix in the Splatoon community, but that I can't because I don't have the time for it, or I don't know something or other that could really help fix the thing that I'm bothered by. Obviously there's things that I wish could obviously basically fix, like the enhanced twisters and having salmonid. I haven't tested Brewster's. Having fish and salmonid in Gmod. But there's other things besides that. Also, Off the Hook, Frosty Fest gear. Splatoon 2, the way the weapons were ported. I really didn't want to not like Tomato, but I have my own opinions based on things we've said, things I believe in that she just can't, that unfortunately force us to be different. But even for the brief period of time in which I was talking with her, something about the weapons feels off. I don't really get it. Might also be because a lot of them are just shrink wrapped, and a lot of them are props with that are very static, like the brush or the roller or something, where you could have them be ragdolled. I don't know how you would ragdoll them particularly, but it would be something. And in terms of like anything, the idea of reporting things from Splatoon 1 that weren't changed bothers me. I know they have RGH maps, but I don't really think it's worth it. Yeah, and this goes for gear too. Honestly, I don't really see the point in reporting it. Maybe as an experiment, sure, but like unless unless it's its own thing, I just don't get it. It's already been done. Sure. Although I'm about to really sound like a hypocrite with what I'm about to get into. With that, I think the main thing that bothers me about that is just the way it was organized. Weapons, but even gear too. Tossing it all into one thing. Okay, yes, it's Splatoon 2, but yeah, Splatoon 2's weapons, some of them are the same as Splatoon 1 and therefore only need minimal changes, yet oh yeah, they're going to be shoved in with the rest of the new ones. I have very little motivation to test Splatoon 2 versions of Splatoon 1 things unless those Splatoon 2 versions are actually different, Splattershot, Mini Splatling, etc. To where, like, it wouldn't make sense. It makes more sense with gear than it does for weapons, honestly. I could probably, but for even the weapons, it's like, I have such a hard time picking up, like, the weapons that are basically the same in Splatoon 2 because they only like reuse the model a little bit and change maybe like one or two basic things about it. It's that's just my personal taste. Not that I don't want anyone to not port it or even release a new version of a port, just sort it. Sort it, otherwise it just doesn't make sense to me. The weapons bother me the least, though. So I would just, like, Splatlings bother me that they don't spin. Even if it is kind of seemingly pointless, it's like, I really... I liked when the Splatlings had, ragdolls, when the brush had a ragdoll, when the... whatever's had a ragdoll. Rollers. And maybe if the shrink wrapping weren't so obvious. I don't know. Come up with something. But that's the least of my issues. Gear is the next thing that I want to speak about. I've been attempting to make the gear for quite a few years now. Several attempts at. The main thing that hinders me is the materials. A large portion of them have reflective bits and pieces, which I feel like I kind of get, but then there's all the rest of the texture types that they have. There's some that have other things in them that bother me. I don't want them to be all shiny and wet looking. And especially when you do things like bring over the Zeka hoodie because it's shinier in Splatoon 2 because of the engine. It's like the albedo texture is basically the same. It's just got a bunch of other effects on top to make it look a little bit different. And again, it makes more sense here than it does for the weapons, but if you are going to bring Splatoon 1 gear over, like, shove it into some other thing that specifically refers to it being Splatoon 1's gear, not really 2's. I know Splatoon 2 was technically a reintroduction of Splatoon 1, due to the fact that the Wii U flopped. I mean, it kind of did, if we're being honest. I mean, I had the metaphorical, flop with the fact that my first one, fried its own motherboard due to an automatic update. That's why I don't do them anymore. So... the Wii U flopped and mine literally flopped. I definitely recall those phone calls where I had to listen to Mario 64's slide on loop while they had me on hold trying to decipher my username before we had system transfer. That was fun. But yeah, I know it technically is a reintroduction, but I don't like pretending that Splatoon 1 gear and Splatoon 2 was suddenly a new piece of equipment just because it's in Splatoon 2. So I never ripped any of it because they don't look all that different. I know the albedo, I know the UV maps for all of them are different. But I just didn't want to bother. It's not... I didn't feel the need to bother. It's just not my thing. When I tried ripping everything as well, I organized it by update because Grisco gear kept on coming out in the later stages because we just gotta keep going! Even though they never actually allowed us to use the Octolite gear that I hate that so much. So, but because there was so much still coming out, I didn't know when it would be done, There's now around, as far as I can tell, 500 and something pieces altogether, if I count everything, including all the beta pieces that I've ripped from things that I also had to follow alongside because no one was actually archiving the updates. Thanks! Yeah, until it was things like Octo Expansion that actually woke people up to that, because good luck trying to get that all the way back in forever, and that's also why I didn't have the Salmon Run maps, because all I had was spawning grounds! Because no one was archiving the updates. Thanks. Anyway. Now obviously people are far more attuned to that. Yeah, we've lost a billion Splatfests and now you can say that. So I have tried to. I use again the same models from Fission's Blend. And, I made a very basic pack of, gear. It's not complete. There's still pieces missing. Things that fused all of them together because I don't like the idea that they are all individually separate when there are ones that are quite literally clones of each other. The negative positive sweater, and then things like the Easy Stripe tees, which are mirrors of one another. The Anarchy Drive Evolution tees, which are different because one has a chip in a different spot than the other one. But they're still clearly clones of one another, mostly. And, I would like to merge them. I don't think the problem with Fission's gear, in terms of that, was that of, the organizing itself, just that the image used to clarify said organizing was overlooked by a crap ton of people because Steam compressed it to the size of the size that ants can read. Like, if even that. Like, it was it was overlooked by way too many people when they subscribed to it. It's the big long image in the full clothes and hats thing. It's just a big long stretch of whatever with points of the model's name and what pieces of gear are in there. Now, I feel like you could break that up into smaller images and use those as promo images that could help clarify things a lot better. Thing is, what he did for that, because Splatoon 1 was so simple with that, was he used the layout icons for that image. Splatoon 2, especially for its beta stuff, doesn't have icons for a lot of them. So you would need to make renders of them in some other program, either in Source or Blender or somewhere, but we don't have... A lot of them are cleaned out, scrubbed before they were made into their final versions, so we don't have images of them. It sucks. But if I mostly need help on the materials, but I don't have any time for it, and no, I'm never gonna get any help now. So I will try to do the same for 3, only of course for the stuff that again is not like the same as in Splatoon 1 or 2. Like, again, if someone wants to report them from 3, because there were a couple of pieces in the trailer that were the same. I did see the shirt and tie, I did see the b-ball home away, the pink tank. Anyway, so, yeah. And then, of course, in terms of Splatfests, I intend to catch up with all that this time, assuming that it's easy enough to get at. But I will try. I did around the end of Splatoon 2's lifespan, so I can hope 3 will be somewhat similar. It's just mostly a lack of time and not even sure if I'm using the right model for it and doing it in the right way. Clothes, that is torso, are the easiest but the longest. It's mostly material issues that I have with those ones. Mostly want to keep them consistent with the old ones. The gloved things, I want to make versions of that actually fit the hands. Even if I have to change the gloved models themselves, I just want to do something to them. But don't know how. I have a large portion or a whole section specifically for the gloved stuff. I haven't actually ported any of them without gloves over yet because I don't feel like that is fine. I want the all the bands and armbands and extra stuff to be split up so then they can be their own bits and pieces that people can put on if they want. Like, I don't know, black squid eye, but instead with the squid king tank, the king squid tank, wrist watch thingo, that she has on the box. You know, stuff like that. And I want to figure that for the gloves too, but again, I don't have any knowledge on that. I don't really want to change the hands, really. It's, I don't like the in-game fish fry hands. And I like that they're changing them in 3. Good god, they look like crap in the first 2 games. Hats. Hats are really difficult because of all of the positioning crap. I'll get into hair in a moment. It's mostly positioning that I'm having trouble with on that end. And of course, again, materials and grouping up things. In that case, I wouldn't mind the hats being separate, because there is there's a lot of hats in there are a lot of hats in 2, and a lot of different types too, so I don't really have any need for anything but recolors to be grouped up. And then for shoes, I'm not sure how ink should be done, if it can be done at all. I have an idea on how the material is achieved. I just don't know how one would actually go about placing the model on it. If it's just the sole of the shoe or something, I don't know. I wasn't really involved. He would have shown me how to port it properly if I had said yes back in the day to the first gear pack. I probably should have. I kind of regret it now, because if I had, maybe I would have been able to make the gear properly. I still have all of it organized properly into categories where these ones are clearly clones of or related to by theme. These are Octo Expansion, these are Hero Mode, etc. Gear pieces, all for the Splatoon 2 stuff, beta included. It's mostly time that's getting in the way of that. I don't have, I'm mostly focused on the maps and trying to, fix up that and all the rest of everything that I've got going on. The last thing I want to talk about, which is pure up in the air speculation, are the actual playable characters. I envy SFM for being as good as it is, but I still don't want to use it. It's one of those things where, because it doesn't have physics, I just don't want to try, even if in this particular case it is more convenient to do it this way. In their case, all they ever really have to do is worry about the base model by itself, because the hair can be whatever the heck you want it to be and more. And that includes any articulation on it. The hair, as it is in Gmod, due to the way Gmod works, can't be that way. Okay, yes, okay, I am aware you can do the stupid thing where you can pose Advanced Bone Tool before you bone merge it, because the bones aren't the same, they'll remain the same, but that also means you can't edit them anymore. And it also means that basically their hairstyles feel like wire. I don't like it. I want the hair to have physics, and I don't really know how to give it physics. I have a small idea on how one would make it, but that's not the main issue that I have. I want to keep all of the torso bits off at the very least. The pants being able to be bone merged at all. The torso bits from the other models I want to keep on, with restrictions. Mostly, I want to keep the girl stuff on the girl, like, it's really hard to explain, isn't it? Mostly want to keep, for say, how the girl had, latex, normal, latex boy, latex, and then no latex versions of both. It was to be that setup, plus whatever they got in Splatoon 2, as for each gender. So, the tank top in Splatoon 2 for the girls, and the nothing for the boys. That was what I wanted to do for the Inklings somehow, is give them that, as well as physics on their hairstyles. As well as, you know, obviously all the new eye colors, which things were going to work towards, but I don't have any faith that any of this will happen anymore, so. Mostly just spilling my wishes for the sake of spilling my wishes, because I don't really know if anyone else wants to agree. I won't really go on for too much longer. I was basically going to hope for the same thing for the Octolings. Like the ones that are playable, the boy and the girl, as well as give physics and rigging to the beta boy hairstyle found in the test fire that Fission seemingly didn't want to touch back in the day for some reason. All of this is stuff I don't really know how to do, especially given that the Octolings don't really have proper facial flexes. The ones on the workshop currently, their eyes are very, very, they're very yuck, because the eye is drawn straight from the top of the eyelid, straight down to being closed. That's why it looks so bad, is when you try to do in between, is because they don't properly blink. It's the equivalent of just dragging your eyelid and then just straight down. Might be very graphic, but that's exactly what's happening with the octolings that are currently on the workshop. Never mind their wire hair, which is not really my ideal way. I had wanted to work towards this being a thing, but I don't really have faith that it will happen now, because of a large number of reasons that I really don't want to get into, but they're very, very personal. And a lot of people that I did know are far too interested in pretending this is some sort of game of hot potato where only one person gets to do one specific thing before you move on to the next person. It's a bad mentality to have. And I know I said before about reporting old things. My issue is that they're shoved in, that they're from Splatoon 2 on the same level as all the rest of the stuff. It's just a personal tasting at this point, but I would just prefer if they were separate, to not have the inclination that they were originally, like, fully from Splatoon 2, even though obviously their model and everything is from Splatoon 2. I just... that, it's semantics, but it bothers me. But too many people are basically interested in playing hot potato for it to really get anywhere. And it's mostly toss the hot potato really far away and just sort of a bunch of other nonsense that gets in the way, and I'm not really gonna go into it, especially when this is as long as it is. So, to cut it short, if this were done for the Splatoon 2 part of the playable characters, obviously player models would be a given. For Splatoon 3, assuming all of this were done and dusted and somehow up there and also able to be released for other people to work with as well, because why should we pretend to claim ownership over a property we don't even have the rights to? Like, we don't own Splatoon, the models. Let just people mess around if they so want, without getting to jump into needless nonsense about who owns what or whatever. But regardless, assuming Splatoon 3, Splatoon 2s were done, and then it was a matter of the Splatoon 3 characters of what we've seen so far. What I would like to do for then at that point is, of what we've seen, Nintendo isn't really changing the things about the models in the trailer. There is that portion in the trailer where she's on the train and there are a lot of cheek movements on her face, but I don't particularly know how much that's going to factor into how much they're changing the way they do things, because in the segment right after that, in the multiplayer, they're right back to using model replacements for the Inklings' and Octolings' mouths again, where it's one frame and they've changed the mouth model or the eye model, and I don't really know to what degree they're going to super change anything about the face because of that. So, and especially considering that, like, of what we saw of the trailer, like, you can even tell that, like, some parts of it are not really fully there yet, because her shirt on her left leg is not rigged to her leg. It just sort of, her leg clips through it, and then it runs, and her shirt isn't moving with it as much. It's moving with the torso, but not the part that's on her leg. So whatever they've done with the model, it probably isn't much beyond a couple of things on the face, and, like, you know, probably the same thing they're doing with the models in 2. So my presumptions would be, if assuming all of this were done for 2, what I would like to do for 3. This will probably never happen because I know nobody who can help me do this, and I have no faith that it'll ever happen. Merge what happened with the torso thing, where it's now 6 torsos, because I don't think Splatoon 3 is really going to add any more. Bottoms obviously are different due to the fact that, like, they're having all of the styles now, so then it would assumedly be 3 versions of Inkling Girl. This is me thinking off the top of my head. 3 versions of Inkling Girl things because of the eyebrow oddities, I guess. Same for the Inkling boy, because I don't really see the actual models changing because of the wording. Like, they don't even have them be super explicitly different in Japanese either, so I'm not really thinking they're really going to change a whole lot about that, because that would really interrupt workflow, I would imagine. Then obviously new hairstyles. And then, like, opposing gender hairstyles, obviously, because of the style thing. For Inklings and Octolings specifically, because, like, it doesn't seem right that an Inkling would have an Octoling's hair until they actually confirm hybrids or whatever. I don't think it'll happen, but yeah, I don't know. The eyes would be sub-materialed. I don't think I would use the proxy tool because proxy tool is a lot to set up in advance. I don't like it unless like something is customizable like the Animal Crossing character. I don't like the proxy tool. I guess it's a case of be careful what you wish for, but I don't think it's a replacement for the TF2 paint tool because they both use different proxies, and Inklings and Octolings are primarily meant to be one color officially. If you want to edit using the VMTs, like, that would be an option for the more advanced user. Otherwise, it would need to be basically advanced color tool, but that's a whole nother topic. That would be, and obviously any of it with physics, that would be my biggest want, desire, dream thingo. And it's never happening because the people who, it goes back to something I said a very long time ago when I started making the maps, and I kept saying it, but people didn't want to listen to me, so I'll just say it again before I end this video for basically explaining everything that I've wanted to explain. The people that want to know don't know how, and have no help from the people who do know how to do it, but they just don't care. And this sort of contradicts what I was saying earlier about the tutorials, but there's a difference between not helping someone because they don't want to be helped versus someone that does want to be helped. Which is why I'm not going to not make tutorials, just that I'm doing them elsewhere. For the things that I do know. Because I don't like that this information is being kept hidden. I don't like that. It's needless to me at this point. All it does is it just creates an environment that is undesirable, that is awful, that is everything that people despise. Because then it factors in dishonesty and people who don't want to challenge anything. Even if that very thing could help them in the long run. Anyway, I won't be long and cryptic. This is already longer than the other two, just by association. I'm in a bit of a slump at the point of recording. By the time this goes up, I may have made progress that is far more than what I can say here. In that case, if you want to follow what I'm doing for the moment, I have a Steam group called Pink's Porting Projects, and you can follow that if you want information on what it is where it is in the map project that I'm exactly up to. I won't post all the time, but when I post an announcement, it should hopefully have been enough time for me to explain exactly what has happened or what has transpired or if nothing even happened at all, and I need to explain that I've been in a slump or something, I don't know. But I will try and keep that up to date. It will essentially be the same as what I will be doing here, but just in written form. Specifically, mostly about maps, because that's all I can do at the moment. And, yeah. Otherwise, I'm gonna be done with YouTube. I will still make videos eventually, but they will not be on YouTube. I will be on other websites under the same name, so you can find me there. Bye-bye!